Thank you so much for joining us. This is So I Did a Thing. I say it every week. Really stoked about this guest tonight. Um, and I'll wait till she gets out here to tell the story of why I connected with her. She does amazing. We were talking backstage, and she just does some really amazing things working with deaf people, and really has a heart for deaf youth. So I'm going to bring Valoree Boyer out here. Hey, Val. How are you?
I'm good.
Your audio is way down.
Okay, let me see what I can do about that.
Like it disappeared all of a sudden. Maria is here.
Better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, awesome.
And I absolutely love that you're signing right now. Like that just makes the whole thing awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to try my best to do it tonight.
All right. So tell us, we were just talking backstage and just about how you got into it, because I thought, well, nobody really thinks when they're a kid, I want to grow up and be an ASL interpreter.
Right.
So tell us how you got into that.
Yeah. Interpreting was not the profession. I was actually wanting to go into teaching, which seems to kind of coincide with my heart for the deaf youth, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it started because there was a mom that had a deaf son, and she knew that I knew some sign. And so she asked me to babysit so that the babysitter could sign with their son. And I started doing the babysitting jobs and fell in love. Actually, I remember the moment that I decided to be an interpreter. And we were playing, what's that game where you try to guess an object in the room, you describe it, and you try to guess what it is. And so me and this little boy were signing, and I was trying to describe this plant, this clay pot. And when he finally understood what I was describing, he went over and he pointed to it, and he was like, "It's not orange. You said orange. That's dirty." Because it was clay. It was
right.
Orange, rusty. And that was the minute that I was like, I'm in love. This is what to do with my life.
That's awesome. So the reason it's been months now since we connected, but the reason I connected with Val was when I was a kid, like young, like 5-ish, 5 and 6, 4 and 5, somewhere in there. My mom, we were living in Dallas, and we went to a church up there that had a really large deaf community within the church. And they always had an interpreter up there, and all the deaf people sat on that one side. And they had a whole ministry for it. Like on Wednesdays, they had their own service in another building, and they cooked pancakes, and they hung out, and they talked, and they had church, and it was just really cool. Yeah. And my mom absolutely fell in love with it. So at a very young age, when mom was working or helping with, not working with them, but helping with them, I was surrounded by all these deaf people all the time. And my mom really had a heart for the deaf. Her sign name was J over the heart because she had a heart for the deaf.
I love that.
Yeah. Mine was a C on my head because when I was a kid, my hair was curly, curly. Like, and I don't have any hair now, but there used to be a lot of it.
That's great.
Yeah. And so she taught us sign language as a kid. And when we moved back to Conroe, found a church there, she started teaching sign language classes. And so at a young age, I was exposed to it. So when I saw it, it really kind of sparked those childhood memories on it. And that's how I ended up connecting with Val. Yeah. And I should have had you on here a long time ago, because this is something that's just like really sentimental to me, I guess, because I have all those memories,
Yeah, those memories.
Yeah, it's amazing. Mom is supposed to be watching tonight. I hope she is. She hasn't commented, Mom. If you're watching, you can drop a comment and let us know you're here.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's an interesting connection that we have, because I don't know if we talked about this before, but both of my parents are preachers.
Okay.
So I'm a PK, and I grew up in the church, and that was what my mom did. She did the deaf church.
Really?
So when I talk about, people always ask me, did I have deaf family? How did I learn? And I always say I had deaf caregivers in my life, which because it's such a complex story to explain, but it's the deaf church that I grew up in, that I was at Sundays, Tuesday night, Wednesday night Bible study, hanging out with their coda kids, and they were really the models that I got language from. That's how I learned. I remember being caught in the hallway by a particular deaf woman that would play finger spelling games with me as a kid.
Oh yeah.
I would like run from her. I don't want to play the game, but I thank her now because I can finger spell. So
yeah, right. And that's
a similar history.
Yeah, and that's some of the very few signs as I remember. I can still do all the alphabet. Yeah, I can do it all. Not much else I remember, but I remember that.
That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. I can get by. It'll take a little longer, but I can get by. So we were talking backstage, and you were saying like this is your first time that you've had like a real paying job for a particular company doing what you do.
Yeah, so I've been working as a staff medical interpreter now for 1 year on staff, and that's fairly unique. Even within the profession, hospitals often have contracts with interpreters, with multiple, right? They'll have multiple different contracts, so the interpreters are always playing to try to get the jobs that they can get. It's contract work, so this is unique that the hospital organization hired me to be on staff, and so I have regular hours that I keep, and that was just to try to help keep the integrity of the interpreting service for the week for patients. We know for sure we've got one person for this set of hours, and then the contractors can cover the other hours. So that is a new venture for me. I've 1 year. I'm coming up on 1 year.
That's awesome. So what did you do before that?
I did all contract work, so freelance.
Yeah.
You name it, I did it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And all over too. I traveled all over the U.S. You know, for a long time. I didn't have any kids, and I've great family to take care of the daughter I have now. So for a long time, they call, sure, Texas, I'll go.
Yeah. All the way from Michigan. That's where you're at.
Yeah, I'm in Michigan. Yeah. Yep.
And you'd come all the way to Texas if they needed you.
Yep. I did many conferences.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. I was still thinking medical, but if you're doing contract,
yeah. I used to work for General Motors, the car company.
Yeah.
So I'd fly around for that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You know, I was just going to add, that's one of the unique things about the interpreting profession, whether it be ASL or any spoken language. We get involved in literally every facet of business and life.
Yeah.
Anywhere there needs to be communication and language, an interpreter could be. And it's a very unique role because 1 minute you could be interpreting for the governor, you take a lunch break, and then the next minute you're interpreting for a car mechanic literally under the car. So, you know, the variety, if you're, an interpreter's joke, we're like, if you're bored with this interpreting job, just wait. After lunch, we got something else to do.
That's awesome. I never even thought about that. So when you say like mechanics and stuff, like doing stuff for car dealerships and mechanic shops?
Yeah, or like students that are in school.
Okay.
Different professions.
Yeah,
I've done machinery. I've done CAD design 4 times. I've done the mechanic work. Yeah, a little bit of everything, and then formal university interpreting. So the gamut is wide. Lots of choices.
Hi, Christina.
We got a whole group tonight.
Yeah, she didn't know I was on the air.
That's great.
And she is camera shy. So quick story about Christina. She works over at our warehouse checking in computers, and her and her mom clean this office once a week. But I was over there and I was shooting a video on my phone for explaining our auditing process. And the girl that was shooting, I'm talking and I'm walking down the audit line and she pans over and there's Christina and all you see is Christina's head go. And she ducked all the way down behind the desk.
That's great.
Yeah. Dang, I had a question before she walked in and threw me off by.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Oh, so what we were talking about being at camp, and we'll get to that in a second. And you said it was very informal and kind of hamming it up. So is there a difference between like technical interpreting for conferences in colleges and in the courtroom or wherever than there is versus just like conversational, just like there is in spoken language?
Yep. Very similar in the differences of spoken language too. And just a real simple way to say it, if I was interpreting in court and the judge were to say hello to everybody that morning, I would use the formal hello.
Mm-hmm.
But like tonight, when you popped up on the screen and said my name, I
just waved.
So yeah, there are a lot of those differences, even in signing too, where we call it more of a casual register versus a more formal. Yeah, and there's different dialects around the country too. Every state kind of has their own little different signing style. Michigan is the most unique, and I have found that when I travel, people know immediately. They go, "Oh, you're from Michigan."
Really?
Yeah, just, it's similar to spoken language too. How and you kind of copy each other and you grow up that way and you get used to that type of lingo. Same with signing.
Huh. Yep. That's pretty cool. So what do you have to have any kind of like certifications or anything to be able to do this stuff like in the medical field or wherever?
Yep. So I have a national license. I passed a national test, so I could do work around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And also in Michigan, I added an additional Michigan endorsement for medical and mental health and deaf-blind interpreting. So there were additional things to add later on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got sidetracked.
Michigan's probably one of, not the only, but one of the most strict states with licensure and certifications for interpreters. The other states, we've got the ADA, and then each state, it's up to them to decide how they want to apply it. And so it's the same thing with the profession. Some states actually don't even have a certification, but they do evaluate the qualifications of the person. So
how do you go about getting certified? Is there like a course you take or a test you have to take to get certified?
Yeah, so there's several universities that offer interpreter training programs from 2 to 4 years.
Oh, wow.
After that program, you can choose to go ahead and test, but some usually take a few years to do some mentoring and take some written tests. There are English proficiency tests to take. And then it's a live video test and another written portion. So
what kind of stuff do they cover if it takes 2 to 4 years to do that? Like, that is intriguing to me.
One of the big things is deaf culture. There's a lot of study that goes into understanding the deaf community themselves, the inequities, the discrimination, their experiences, and hearing their stories, and understanding that you're trying to impress upon new interpreters that when you show up to do the job as the interpreter, you're a neutral party, but also it's not all about me. Look at me, I interpreted this really cool thing. It's about the individual and their story and what they want to say. You can only understand that by hearing their stories and listening to them. So that's usually a big piece of the program. But then also knowing sign and translating are two totally different worlds, right? Because you can hear and understand something, but then have to reframe it and put it out in another language. It's a lot of mental processing, focus, and in the meantime, they're still talking.
Right.
So it takes a lot of practice to do all of this work in your head, put it out in another language, and at the same time still be taking in what they're still saying in the next sentence.
Wow.
That's a huge piece of it, just to practice practice that process.
Yeah, because I remember like growing up in church, we had missionaries come in like from Mexico or whatever, and he was American and his wife was Mexican. And whenever she would speak and he would interpret, she would say something and then he would interpret. And she would say something and then he would interpret. So it was kind of this back and forth deal.
Yeah.
But I guess when you're interpreting for sign language, whoever's talking doesn't slow down.
Right. They can keep going because the signing is silent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to interrupt you to speak necessarily if I'm signing. But yeah, so then they don't slow down. They just go. And after a lot of practice, your speed, I would say each individual interpreter has their own individual pace that they can do. Some slower, some faster. It depends on the we call it lag time too. So if a deaf person is signing and I as the interpreter are going to speak English and use my voice to say what they're signing, sometimes you'll notice the deaf person signing and the interpreter isn't saying anything yet. And you almost have this uncomfortable silent air, like, is she going to say anything? She's processing what they're about to say, and then she's going to spit it out and catch up. And every interpreter has different lag time. That's what we call it, lag time.
Yeah.
My lag time's long. I let them go a sentence or two. I want to know where they're headed, and then I'll kick in. And if I have a team, it always freaks them out. They're always like, oh, no, say something. I need one more sentence. But
yeah.
a lot of practice because you still have to hold it, spit it out, and see new information.
That's a lot. I think Julie had a question for you.
Oh, I see. How many individuals like me around the country? I mean, there's hundreds. There's hundreds of interpreters. I think RID membership, I wouldn't even want to guess the number. I know there are hundreds of us around the country, but not everybody is full-time. So there's a lot of part-timers. Maybe they teach in the daytime and interpret evenings or weekends. So.
Okay, cool. So tell us about the camp, because I had some questions about that backstage, but I wanted to wait and save them for when we were live.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, your face lit up whenever I said that.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's my favorite. I wish it was my full-time job, but
yeah,
it's okay. So it's called Camp Chris Williams. It's a 1-week summer camp for deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind youth, middle school and high school age. They stay at the camp for 1 week here in Michigan. We do northern Michigan. And it is a full camp experience with climbing wall, a lake. We go canoeing. We swim in the lake a lot. We play a lot of games in the woods. We do like survival things. We invite deaf and hard of hearing professionals to come and speak at the camp. 1 year we had a deaf veterinarian bring a bunch of animal bones and show those to the youth. And all of our staff are alumni. They're previous campers, which I think is just remarkable for the integrity of the camp, that the campers come to camp and then they become the leaders of the camp. I think really is our goal. That's our ultimate goal, to take the generation of leaders. I'm always saying every year, I'm looking around going, who's going to replace me? Each one of these kids is the next director. That's really what I'm there for. So it's my favorite. It's my favorite part of the summer.
Tell us about the musical chairs, because I thought that was absolutely hilariously amazing.
Yeah, I was sharing some stories of games that we play. We play musical chairs. And so hearing people typically play it with music and shut the music off. But deaf people play it with the lights off. So when the lights are on, they're going around the chairs. When the lights go out, they have to find a seat. And that's always dangerous to have a bunch of teenagers looking for a chair in the dark.
Right.
But had no injuries at camp so far.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to ask about was Julie had a question again.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, we did cover it, but she can hit it again just real quick.
I can give it briefly.
Yeah.
I got interested. I started babysitting a deaf boy, and I got interested in the job, and actually took a few jobs here and there, and just fell in love. Kept going.
Yeah. Yeah, and Julie had said this at the beginning. That was probably the first question I asked her. Not many people think about it. I want to be an ASL interpreter when I grow up, but she just fell in love with this little boy. And your mom was involved with the deaf church. You said that too.
Yeah, my mom, I don't give her enough credit. She's such a huge piece of this. My mother's pastor's wife, and she ran a deaf church, and she founded an interpreting agency in our home before it was popular to have home businesses in your home. This was the mid-'80s.
Yeah.
She founded this agency, and the agency grew. And I have memories in my childhood of watching my mother at the kitchen table with the telephone wire with the coil, taking calls for interpreters. And she had this huge book with a big schedule, and she would take in the information. And later she got a grant, and she was able to move the agency under a nonprofit. But that was my heritage. That's how I grew up.
Yeah.
Watching my mom work within the deaf community.
Mm-hmm. You have kids now, right?
I do. I have one girl. She's 12.
Does she know sign language?
She does. Yeah. So she comes to the camp with me. And I was a single mom for a long time, so I just brought my kid with me everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And just gotten used to coming along. And she comes to the camp. We call her the kid director. She helps out, and she's got her own deaf friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me about the challenges that are with like deaf blind kids. Like that's always fascinated me. Like, how do you communicate with them?
Mm-hmm. So deaf and blind, obviously you have a sense of loss in your hearing and your vision. And just like hearing levels have a wide variety, so does deaf blindness. So we say deaf blind, but could be completely deaf and just see in a small box. So still have some vision. Or it could be the other way around. They could be completely blind and hard of hearing. So it really just depends on the individual and how we communicate. Sometimes you just get real close, and so you're in their field of vision and you sign small. Sometimes you actually need to be farther back. Their field of vision is far away. Usually the signing space is smaller. And then if they need, we call it tactile interpreting. We do hand over hand. And so I would sign while they hold my hands and feel the signs in my hand. And then when they sign, I would hold their wrists so they knew I was still there. Or sometimes I just put a hand on their shoulder and watch them sign. And that's how we do it back and forth, tactile.
That is awesome. So how do you teach a kid that, though, that has trouble hearing and seeing? Like, how do you teach them that, this is church?
Right. Yeah, this is another one of my favorite aspects. And I think, again, it goes to education in youth. I used to work at an elementary school in the deaf-blind program.
Okay.
And it still to this day is one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, because the education was an experience every day. It was an experience. And so just, for instance, when it was snack time, we just didn't lay out the snack and have the kids eat. First, we would feel the box. How did the box feel? What was the difference between saltine cracker box and a Ritz cracker box? Feel the difference, and then spell the word in their hand. And then let them open it. And it was always messy. The box was always messy. It was always tore open and crackers everywhere, but it was all part of the experience. Oh, the Ritz crackers have a softer feel to them. The saltines are a little more harsh. And we would describe those things back and forth. And then we would taste the difference. And next thing you know, they know the sign for cracker, they know soft, they know hard, they know box, they know salty. And it was all just through experiencing, they were a mess, I was a mess. It didn't matter. We were learning language.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember there was this one kid that loved to play with the balls at recess, and we would purposely put them up high for language purposes. Which ball do you want? You want the blue ball? The blue ball? And they would point to the green, and we'd grab green, and they'd, okay, well, you signed green. Which one do you want? So it was this back and forth game of teaching them language. And I'll never forget the day that he pointed and he goes, blue ball.
That has got to be one of the
that
has got to be one of the most fulfilling things ever.
Yeah, and you're empowering them to make their own choices. They are expressing themselves. That's what every human wants, right? Regardless of our hearing level, our vision, we all just want to be able to express ourselves and experience life. And I think that's really what has drawn me into this work.
Hey, Gabe, how's it going, man? Gabe has been kind of mentoring me in the whole getting into producing live streams. Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Gabe.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I say this every time. I'll think of a question and I don't write it down while somebody's talking, and then my mind goes blank when we get off into a conversation.
I was just noticing the comment. Someone says that's a beautiful why story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Amanda Knight. For some reason, she comes up as LinkedIn user, but yeah, that's Amanda Knight. It is a beautiful why story. Like, it's such almost like the perfect storm of a why story between your mom influencing you. And then I guess it was because of your mom that you knew the sign language to be able to babysit that boy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because my mom started signing with me when I was a baby, and her deaf friends, would hold me in church while she was busy working. So yeah, she's the reason.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now you've passed that along to your daughter.
Now she's hard of hearing.
Is she really? Just from being older?
Yeah, she's got some other issues, tendonitis and whatever going on. So kind of tease her about it.
You were setting yourself up for this a long time ago, Mom.
Loud.
Yeah. That's hilarious. So what is it like? What was it like going from mainly classrooms, conferences, a little bit of medical here and there, to doing just only medical? Like, just to be blunt about it, like, you have to deal with doctor egos and nurse egos and stuff like that. Like, how do they treat you and accept you and like all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, it is a lot different because, before, as a freelancer, I was drawn to the jobs where I got to play. I'm a very playful person, and I enjoyed anything with the kids. I would take up those jobs for sure. The youth or the college kids. And then to go into an environment where sometimes you're talking about some very serious medical issues. People are angry because they've spent the last several years with no access to communication. And then finally they get an interpreter that shows up in the room and they just vent the last 5 years of frustration. But then also you've got these beautiful moments where, I worked with a doctor not too long ago that had a family member that was deaf. So the doctor knew a little bit of sign and was able to sign a little bit with the patient. And then I interpreted. And when the patient left, they were in tears. They were just so happy that they could have a direct conversation with their physician and have an interpreter in the room. It was like the perfect setup for them. So those are the moments that you just kind of hold on to, and the craziness of healthcare. I mean, we all know healthcare in this last year. I got in during a pandemic, right?
Right.
I started in healthcare in a really hard time. And I found that you just lean on each other, even though the nurses maybe not are in the best mood. I have to understand what they've been dealing with for a while and try to be gracious with them. And I do a lot of listening and a lot of, I call it holding space, where
Mm-hmm.
I know that it might be coming at me, but it's not about me. It's about the job. And at the end of the day, it's all about the patient. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
That's got to be an amazing feeling for the patient, especially people that have had long-term stuff going on, where they've been dealing with it for a while. To finally have someone there to be able to, this is what I'm feeling. How come this? Why not this?
mhm,
And
yeah,
just be able to communicate, like you said. Like that's got to be the most frustrating thing in the world, to not be able to communicate effectively
yeah.
to your healthcare provider.
Yeah, and that's exactly the goal, the relationship with the healthcare provider. It
Mm-hmm.
should be patient and provider, but when you have a communication breakdown, whether it be because of hearing loss or you don't get along, any type of communication breakdown destroys that relationship, and then it affects healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can remove that equation and better the communication, then it's
Mm-hmm.
more likely the patient provider are going to have a good relationship, and then
Mm-hmm.
the individual's health will be better.
Right.
And in the perfect scenario, um, I'm in the room, but nobody really thinks about it, if that makes sense. So the doctor and the patient are talking back and forth, and I'm interpreting, but when I'm done, they say goodbye to each other, they acknowledge each other, and no one acknowledges me because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the telephone line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not me. I'm just there to facilitate the communication, and they have such a bond that they don't even feel like there's an interpreter in the room. That really is the perfect.
And to be able to have that attitude and not be ego driven about it. So, well, if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be able to communicate.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. That brings bad energy in the room.
right. Exactly. Because if you roll up in there like, you're all that in a bag of chips.
Right. Right. I actually had a doctor tell me once, no, I actually can treat the patient without you. And he rattled off all the things medically that he could do with no communication at all. And I was like, okay,
Right.
there. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. But how
So
are you going
I'm
to,
in for the relationship.
yeah. So how are you going to tell the patient that's how you're going to treat them though?
Right. What?
Yeah, you can do that, but you come at me with a needle or something. I want to know what you're putting in my body. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, I've been doing this particular, hospital that I'm on staff now. I've been there for a year. So
Mm-hmm.
people are starting to know my face and my name. And we're starting it to, I show up and the doctor looks, like in the ER, because the staff changes all the time. But now I've kind of seen all the different shifts. And an ER doc will see me way down the hall and he'll look at me and he'll go, and I'll know, okay, I'll stay right here. And a few minutes later, he'll come around the corner. He'll go, okay, I'm ready for you. Let's go. So, yeah, it just takes time and
Yeah.
consistency.
So working at a hospital, you do everything from ER to like doctor's rounds or whatever, the whole gambit.
Yeah. Anything that a patient would need to go and get medical care for. So, X-ray,
Mm-hmm.
CT, operation, home health care, visiting nurses, physical therapy. Yep.
So you go to people's homes with the home health care nurses.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Or we hire our contract interpreters because it is just me. So I make out my schedule, and then if there's still additional work to do, we've got some contractors
And you're the only one that's on staff
for the system,
for
right?
that system. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, for now. I guess the goal is to not just have one.
Yeah, I'm going day by day.
Right.
And it's new for my hospital as well. They had never had a staff ASL interpreter, so I think we're just kind of going with
Mm-hmm.
daily needs and reassessing, and um, it's working out.
Are there many hospitals, if you know, are there many hospitals in the country that have an on-staff ASL interpreter?
Yeah. So actually, here in Michigan, in the Detroit area, I know of one. There could be more. I know of one, and then
Okay.
in Flint, northern Michigan. I think there might be 2 or 3. I'm
Okay.
not sure about Traverse City, Grand Rapids area. I'm not sure. But I know in Texas, I want to say Dallas and Austin both have several on staff in hospitals. And then Washington, D.C. as well.
Yeah.
Out east, they've got huge deaf community, so many staff.
And ASL is considered like a real language, right? It's not like English or Spanish or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's 3rd or 4th most commonly used in the United States right now, and is offered as a foreign language credit.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my youth pastor was going back to college, and he had thought about taking ASL because it counted as a foreign language credit.
Yeah. And I always encourage, even if people pick it up, 1 class or 2 classes, I always encourage people, it shows up in every facet of life. It's communication. You don't have to be an interpreter. But it's so cool if a deaf person goes to a mechanic to get their car fixed, and the mechanic just happens to know a few signs.
Right.
To ease conversation. You just never know where it's going to come up.
That's awesome. Let's see. So what do you do when you're not interpreting? Like I noticed on your profile, you said something about being a beauty influencer. Is that right?
Yeah, the title makes me laugh. I'm not good with titles. It came from the company. I took it from the company.
Okay.
I sell makeup, and every company has their own tag that they put on. Beauty influencer was their tag, so okay, fine.
I was like, well, I wonder if she's on Instagram then. I mean,
I am. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm not very active on Twitter, but TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah. And you've probably seen me make some jokes about Amway. I joke about Amway all the time. I do really love their products. I actually used to sell it. So that's why I feel like I could joke and tease them. But what are they? IBOs, independent business operators or something. Yeah. So beauty influencer was just from that makeup company. So I did a good job. My daughter's in theater at school and band. So really, when I'm not interpreting, I'm a band mom. I'm a theater mom. I'm a mom. I'm an aunt. I've got a lot of nieces and nephews.
That's awesome. Yeah. Theater is very expressive, just like sign language is very expressive. So I bet it just kind of coincides with, like, it's just right up her alley.
Yeah. She loves it.
One thing that always, what were you saying?
Oh, I just said, yeah, she loves theater.
Loves it. Yeah. One thing that always stuck out to me, even when I was young, was, when people are signing, they're not just dry signing. They're putting emotion and putting expression into it and inflections, just like you would as if you were speaking.
Right.
Like just watching you and watching your facial expressions and the way you move your body with the signs. And there's emotion and character there.
Right. Yeah. Anytime you see an interpreter's face open up, like a common one, good example is the mouth does sow. So you don't say it, but the mouth makes this movement like that. Is the kind of like an adjective. You're adding a description onto a word that means like, oh man, that's a bummer. If I were to be like, oh, that's terrible. But then if I were to do sow and sign terrible at the same time, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. So I've just changed the meaning of the word by just what the mouth is doing. So some people see those interpreters with the governors doing the press conferences. And they kind of joke because the interpreter looks like they're, making that's why. Yep.
Yeah. And deaf people, and that's, you learn to pick up on that. Like, that. So it's not just with your hands, it's with your face and your mouth too.
Right. The nose too. We do this nose thing while you're someone's talking with you and you go, and it's all these little twitches with the eye. Yeah, they all mean something.
Yeah. So what does the nose thing mean?
Like you're following along. Like I'm not doing it right now, but I'm on the spot. I'm having a yeah, but you're like, oh, I'm with you. Yeah, I know.
That is awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Or like if you really want to get someone's attention and something's really interesting, you got to see it. You got to look right now. They with their tongue, they go.
Really?
And really, what they're doing is look. So it's like L. That means like right now. You gotta see this. So stuff like that. Yeah, you do. You pick up on it and understand that it gives it context.
Do they teach you that kind of stuff when you're going through? Okay.
Yep. That's part of the training too, because you can learn the sign look. Look at the bear running over here. And with just that affect, you would be like, okay.
Yeah.
But if I was like bear, it doesn't matter what else I have to say. You're gonna look at bear. What?
Yeah.
So you learn those things in a training program for sure.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that. Yeah, that was
bear. You can tell I'm from Michigan.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we don't have bears in Texas. One thing I thought was cool was the face shields and masks that you've been wearing. Tell us about those. Like, why is it important if you're signing? And I guess you just answered that question. Why is it important to be able to see your face?
Right.
That makes more sense now.
Yeah. The mask thing, understandably for safety, really cut off so much of the context of the language. So you see the signs, but what gave it meaning was here, and we just covered it all up. So I've kind of had to like retrain myself, and I'm learning from the deaf community as we go along. I always ask the patient first. I've got a couple options. I got a clear mask, I got a shield, and I've got a regular medical mask. What is your prep? What are they comfortable with? Some patients will tell me, please wear a regular mask. And others will say, oh, I really depend on the lip reading. I really need lip movement. And so I'll switch out my mask for that very reason. But for some deaf that say, oh, I'd prefer you keep a regular medical mask, please. I've learned to watch their eyes. A lot of what was here that I was watching, I'm now watching in their pupils and their eyebrows and their head. Everything up here now is transferred. And it's something I'm still learning from the deaf community themselves.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's going to be an ongoing thing because it's new to them too.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's trying to figure out. Yeah.
It's like throwing a whole monkey wrench, throwing a whole new language into the language almost.
Yeah. And in some spaces where they could do okay without an interpreter, we added a plexiglass window. You know, so we've even deadened the sound even more. So if they were picking up some things with hearing aids or implants before, now we've just totally cut that off. You know, it's a huge population within our own American citizens that we've just completely cut off. Whether they know sign language or not, anyone can have a hearing loss. Right.
Yeah, because that makes me think about like your mom or even somebody that's getting older that doesn't know sign language, but is going deaf or has lost a lot of their hearing.
Right. Yeah. So I have a lot of different, you've seen them. I post pictures of all the different types of masks and shields tools I use at the hospital. And some are just for hard of hearing. They don't sign. They're just aging. And we accommodate the best we can and still be safe.
Yeah. So is there any particular way that you say like an older guy or woman comes in and has lost some hearing because they're older and they don't know sign language? Like what is that? How does that communication work?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure most of the time they have hearing aids so they can kind of pick up on some stuff, but is there anything in particular you do with them or that the hospital does with them?
Well, I can share what they have told me themselves because I've asked that same question, and their response to me has been, first of all, maintain eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot gets lost when they turn to type on a computer,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't realize it, but you're grabbing for the blood pressure cuff,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time saying, "I'm going to take your blood pressure," and that's
Ah.
been lost. So the practice of grabbing the cuff, making eye contact, "I'm going to take your blood pressure." Um, the hard of hearing community themselves has told me that alone solves a lot of problems. Um,
Okay.
being able to write back and forth
Yeah.
is something available. Any sort of visuals, if you're talking about the heart, if you've got a picture of the heart, you can kind of point to some things.
Mm-hmm.
Picture. Sometimes I see with medicine, the doctor has a list with pictures of the pills. And that's helpful. You can't remember the name, but I know it starts with a C.
Right.
Yeah. So visuals, but eye contact, that's what I hear most often.
Yeah, because like you said, you don't even think about, like, if I'm going to reach for my light right here, I'm not going to keep looking at you and reach for my light. I'm
Right,
going to look where the light is.
right, right. We're walking down a hallway. This happens all the time. You're walking down the hallway, and as you're walking down the hallway, over the shoulder, they'll say name and date of birth.
Oh, yeah.
The person behind them won't answer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then they turn and look at them like,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amanda used to be an EMT.
Yeah. So I know a few ENTs here in my town that know some sign, and that has helped out tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
Not only if there was a deaf or hard of hearing patient that needed the emergency help, but just to know that you need to call for an interpreter. I got a phone call from an ENT in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and it was a long drive. So for the ambulance, we had some time. We arrived at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So as the patient's being pulled out, I was right there to interpret. Like, that never happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard to get someone there like that. But
Mm-hmm.
just because the ENT in the ambulance knew and had some awareness, we
Mm-hmm.
were able to get the ball rolling. So every little bit helps.
Yeah. Link, I had a question for you.
Does every hospital has a contract signed with an interpreter? I don't know about every, but it's fairly common that if the hospital doesn't have the contract, the overarching association, you know, like Ascension Health is a national organization
Mm-hmm.
that owns many different hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
Ascension might have the contract, and maybe not the individual hospital, but
It would almost seem like you would have every hospital would have to have somebody they could call.
yeah, well,
You
but
would think, you would hope. Yeah.
ADA.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to have at least a name of something on your list so that if you
Mm-hmm.
needed it, you could make a call.
Yeah.
Entirely deaf. Yeah. Family member. Yeah. So, you know, and that's another thing. Historically, family members have been the interpreters. And then
Mm-hmm.
as the interpreting profession changed and evolved, and then ADA, you know, that law was passed, we were able to have professionals in there and let family be family.
Right.
It's hard when you're the daughter interpreting to your mom about do not resuscitate.
Mm.
It's a very emotional conversation. And so if you can let the daughter be the daughter and have an interpreter,
Yes. I didn't even think about it. Yeah, that would be tough, man, to be sitting there giving some bad news, from the doctor or
sensitive.
sensitive. Yeah,
Yeah,
sensitive.
you know, I interpret for teens. I do pediatrics, and at a certain age, they start asking very sensitive questions. And sometimes the provider will ask the parent to leave the room. you know, hearing or deaf.
Mm-hmm.
They can have a one-on-one conversation. Sometimes not. You know, those can
Mm-hmm.
be uncomfortable questions if your mother or your aunt is your interpreter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amanda made a good point. With COVID and so many restrictions on family members, that could get tricky.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially, like you said, you want the family to be the family.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the support system.
Yeah.
So let them be the support system, and then we can do just the language.
Yeah.
Yeah. COVID did change a lot of one of the things I like in our hospital and some of our hospital rooms, the doors are glass. So our COVID patients, even though they were contained in a room, the door was closed, but we could still talk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. So it made a nice, safe barrier. And we even had a situation where family was able to come up and converse back and forth with the patient because of
Mm-hmm.
glass doors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where it wouldn't have really been that feasible for somebody that was speaking.
Right. To go in. Yeah.
Right. Because you can't really stand outside the door and yell.
Right. And you have a bodysuit on and
Right.
all the
This has been like an amazing conversation. I have loved every single minute of this.
Thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's different. This is my
Yeah.
first time doing something like this.
Is it really? I love it. Like I love, and I tell people like we talk backstage, and like I told you, or like I told you earlier in the DM, like I treat all of these. Most of my like us when I first started off, I knew my guests, but as I got more comfortable with it, I started inviting people on that I'd never had a conversation with, and I just absolutely love the community building that it's done for me. Is having people I've never really talked to a whole lot, maybe a little bit in the comments, maybe not.
Yeah.
And just get to know them live with audience interaction. Like I've absolutely loved it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, Val, yeah.
nice comment. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any last minute questions before we say goodbye? There's a delay on LinkedIn, so it's there's like a 30-second delay. So
I'll throw this out because I don't know if anyone will ask. I'm often asked about learning sign language.
mm-hmm.
And there are several different YouTubes that I highly recommend from some deaf creators. So I'll put it on my LinkedIn later tonight.
Okay.
And I always say, if you're going to start with your ABCs. Just like you said, your
Yeah,
ABCs.
I still remember that.
Your way out of anything.
Yeah, I still remember all that. So interestingly enough, I know two different alphabets. And I did some time in prison when I was younger,
Okay.
and they have a totally different alphabet because you'll be across the run from someone or outside, and they'll be communicating,
Yeah.
and theirs looks more like the actual letter. So it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Wow.
Yeah, like I can do the.
I would be lost.
Yeah, I know. It took me a little bit to figure it out because somebody'd be signing something. I'd be like, what? And I'd try to do it in ASL, and they were like, what are you talking about? So yeah, there's another one. Holly jumped over to Twitch. She was on LinkedIn.
Keep in mind, if I ever go and do any prison interpreting,
Right.
and they're like, okay.
You would impress the hell out of them if you walked in and knew their alphabet.
I don't know if I could. I don't know.
Oh.
Sounds like 2 syllables.
Yeah. Like charades.
Yeah.
Exactly. Val, thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed this immensely.
Me too. Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. Who do I have next week? Next week on the 23rd, Tuesday the 23rd at 7 Central, I have Kirsten Granados. The week after that, the 30th, I have Linka. She was here a minute ago. She's still here. And then I am taking the entire month of December off, except for we're going to invade LinkedIn next month. My little tribe of people, we're going to do a Friendsmas Live, and I'm going to use a different platform for that. I'm going to use Restream, and with Restream, you can pair your guest pages. If they have LinkedIn Live, you can pair your guest pages. So we're going to be like streaming on 10 or 12 different profiles at the same time.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So we're going to do a little Friendsmas thing, just get together and hang out. And yeah, Linka, she's going to be my guest in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Cool. Val, thank you again so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.